Hello everybody, this is your Raised Prey Silk Painting Course, Video 4 Part 2. And this is the making of an American flag. Okay, so we're going to go over some items, a real quick list of what you'll need to do your American flag. I'm really excited that I finally get to show someone how I do these American flags. I've been doing them for years. And I finally have got to the point where I've discovered this polyester fabric, so it's going to be real fun to do one with the polyester, because if I make a mistake, the polyester was, $1.99 a yard. Not a tragedy to just toss that to the side and start on another one if I make a mistake on it. It's not real easy to remove mistakes, and so it's really good to work with this type of fabric, especially when you're just beginning. Okay, so next we have our paints. So I am, of course, using red and blue. We have white, we're just not painting the stars, and we're not painting the stripes that are supposed to be white. And we have our large stretcher frame. The one that I built at the beginning of the video, that's the one that I've been using, and it works really good with this particular flag that I need to use it with. Okay guys, so the polyester fabric comes in rolls, and so here I am in the floor of my studio. I've rolled the polyester out onto my pattern that I made. I have my stars and my banner pattern and my stripes, and so I've rolled it out on top of the 26 by 50-ish paper pattern. And I'm using just a basic pencil. And the reason why I'm using a pencil and I'm not using a fake pen is because I'm going to use my Gouda Resist, and it's going to hide the pencil line. Okay, so I'm going to finish up real fast here and go ahead and draw my lines on my banner. If you make a mistake, you kind of can't go backwards because the polyester doesn't take erasing. So you have to be pretty precise in every mark you make on fabrics, basically. Okay, so I am starting to trace over my stars with my Gouda Resist. I want to encourage each one of you to remember some of the tips that I showed you about the Gouda Resist. If you use the tips sometimes a lot, and you don't clean the tips, or you don't be sure to place a stick pin in the end of it, it will clog. So be real diligent to keep that tip clean, because once you start tracing over those lines, you want to be precise. It's sort of like, you get into a flow, and if you have to stop and start back because you are having to clean the tip a lot, it just loses some of your your momentum that you've worked out, and really the way that you squeeze the bottle has to come in, to this constant tension that your hand has learned, how much to squeeze out for each line on the stars. So one of the tips I had mentioned to you before is you can take your Gouda resist bottle about halfway full. I would suggest it to be, keep it at least halfway full. No, don't fill your bottle up to all the way to the top, because sometimes what will happen is when you turn it upside down, you'll have a lot coming out all at one time. So if you're in a room where it's kind of cool, and you may end up having your bottle get a little cold and it's hard to get any of it to come out, I suggested, remember I had mentioned this before, to just place it in a little container of warm water, not scalding hot, just warm, and shake it up in there maybe 30 seconds to a minute, and you'll get that warmed up so it'll come out really easily after that. Okay, now we're going to start on the lines. So this is a little harder to do than the stars. I started on the stars first. It's always good to start in a corner, kind of, you can kind of get that part, and then you can go out from the corner. So starting in the corner with the stars is a good idea. So then you're going to start making your lines. And what I would do, if you've ever taken any art lessons, I've never taken an art class in my life, but my daughters and my sons have, and I've heard their art teachers speak about lines, drawing lines, making lines. And one of the things that I've heard them say to my children when I've been in their classroom is when they make a line, they want to sort of drag their hand across the paper. And if you can learn how to make a line just naturally like that, you just move your hand across the surface of the paper in a very natural way, you'll get the straightest line, opposed to trying to trace it, and trying to be, perfect the way you view it. But maybe using your hand is the momentum to get that line across there. And although I do have it traced on the polyester fabric here, I'm using that same process to just sort of let my hand drag across behind the Gouda to get that good smooth line going. And so, like I said, once you start, you keep going, you've got that momentum worked out, and it ends up being fairly easy if you don't have a lot of stops and starts. You can kind of see what I mean here. I made the bottom lines. I stood in front of the banner and I made the bottom lines. And I have a great spread table, by the way. So I like my spread table to come up a little above my belly. And it's not too high, not too low, just perfect. It actually came out of a garment company here in Starkville. My husband was able to glean from one of the garment companies in Starkville, basically getting rid of all of their old equipment. So I got some desks and some tables, and I got a lot of good goodies. This was last year. So you just keep going with your Gouda, keep making those lines across there as smooth as you can. Try not to do a lot of stops and starts. Just make a really clean Gouda line. Try to make it as even as possible, like the same amount of Gouda coming out of the tip of that bottle as possible. Not a lot of, a lot of thick lines, and then you have a thin line. You want to have the same consistency. So I would just say practice maybe a little bit before you did this banner. Yeah, it never hurts to practice. Maybe you could get some of your polyester fabric and and just draw some pencil lines and practice. I know once you get started, you don't want to just get in the middle of it and you've messed it up. And you know, if you try to remove it, it's going to smear and dig even deeper into the fabric. So it's not going to be easy to get out if you smear it. You could probably take some a nice clean rag. I always encourage people to, when they clean something or spill up, to make sure you use a clean rag and take hot soapy water and dab, 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 dab. Dabbing's better than rubbing. Rubbing sometimes can grind the paint or dye or the Gouda in even deeper. So I encourage people when they start to have to clean something up they've messed up, to dab it first. Put something underneath it, a dry towel on the top, wet, hot, soapy, and dab it till you can lift that up. If you dab it long enough, you'll lift probably half of it up. And a lot of times after it dries, it doesn't even show the mistake anymore. So I'm just finishing this piece up, making sure all my edges. Later on when I start sewing this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the whole thing out, but I'm leaving the Gouda outside border on, and when I get ready to sew it, I'm going to flip the stitch in, and it's going to leave the Gouda line in it. This is the outside border, and it's going to even make it even a stronger edge around it, because the Gouda will be there, and also a sewed hem on the edges too. So we've got this just about done. I'm finishing the last little bit. This was a lot of Gouda, and guys, I didn't make any mistakes, not even with the stars. It was a great job. I did a fantastic Gouda job on this one. Okay, so I'm prepping my area here. I'm going to get some a little bit more light. Getting my room ready. Okay, I'm just securing my clamps, working those all the way around the frame. And you know whatever that you use, it really doesn't matter what you use to secure your fabric around your wooden frame or a plastic frame, whatever kind of frame. You can buy these frames and they already come with all the equipment you need to stretch silk. You don't necessarily stretch fabric polyester, because polyester is not necessarily stretchable, but I guess you could say you stretch the polyester. I usually just like turn the polyester in underneath all the edge, and I put my clamps into my wooden frame. Makes it good and taut. I have lots of these clamps, so instead of using a pin or using some other kind of method, since I have a lot of salvage around the edge of the banner and what I'm painting is only on the inside, I don't have any problem with clamping the edges on the outside because it's not going to come in contact with any of my painting area. Okay, I'm just doing the last little bit of clamping this on. And like I've said before, you don't have to pre-wash your polyester. Your polyester is, it comes with a sizing, but you're not supposed to wash the polyester before you make a banner. It's not necessary. The acrylics, it does really well on the polyester. You don't have to set it either. It doesn't have to be heat set. It's gonna do great outside in the weather. I don't know about fading. It will fade because all fabrics fade in the sun. But as far as weather resistant, you're gonna have a really good weather resistant banner. Okay, so I have my paint ready to go. I usually put it in a little dish, and when I start painting, I hold my paintbrush right over that area, as close as I can so I won't have drips. So you just want to go along each one of those lines. And I didn't have any problem with it oozing out of my Gouda Resist line. And I'll tell you a couple of things you can do when you draw out your lines. Anytime you use Gouda Resist on fabrics, you want to press a little bit into the fabric. Another tip is that you can place your Gouda Resist line on the front and the back of the fabric, so you'll have two. It will be, I guess, double strength, and it helps it not to move underneath the Gouda Resist line if you have it painted on the front side of the fabric and on the back side. I used a medium brush, and not too small, not too big, just a medium one, so I get a good coverage. And one of the tips that I would say in doing this American flag, you've got so much white there that it would be a shame for you to get dribbles on your piece that you're doing here. So I, as much as I can, hold my brush over only the painted area. I just don't at all ever hover the brush over the white area, whatever I'm painting. And I try to keep my bowl right close to the fabric, so if I have any drips, it won't go very far. I decided to do the red stripes first. I knew my hand was going to get really super tired after doing all of the stripes. I can kind of get a little bit of a breather in every once in a while, starting and stopping each line. I'd do a couple of lines and then I'd stop. If you painted for any length of time, you end up developing a little bit of carpal tunnel. So yeah, I'll do a couple of lines and then I'll let my hand relax a little bit. Sometimes it gets real numb and I have to let it relax a little bit. So I knew that my hand was going to do that, so I went ahead and did the lines so I could give myself a little bit of time to not stress my hand out too much, because once I started with the blue, going around the blue, I wasn't going to be able to stop at all. So once you start painting on the blue, you can't stop, because if you stop, you'll have sometimes it'll develop, depending on the paint you have. If you've mixed your paint up with water, if you've mixed it up with other colors, like if you've taken blue and purple and mixed it together, sometimes in doing that it causes a little bit of difference in as it dries on the fabric. You may have a little kind of like an area of a surface line on the edge that you will begin to see appear before you can get back over there and start painting again. And I'll kind of show you that in a few minutes once we finish these red lines. Okay, so we're going to start painting, and I am using a smaller brush. So I would say in your supply list, you're going to need probably 2 brushes. A little larger brush for the, I would recommend a larger brush for the stripes, and a slightly smaller brush for painting the blue. blue that I mixed, I believe I mixed a little bit of indigo with an azure blue. I got a little bit of a darker blue color than I normally use. I liked the color, but I started noticing that it was drying up fast. As soon as I could put it down, it started drying up and started making kind of like this hazy line around. It wasn't as smooth as my red. So I think when you mix colors together, like maybe purples, periwinkles, azure blues, different, like cobalt blue and different things, that it kind of messes with the paint a little bit. Or if you place a little water, diluted it a little bit, it doesn't go on the fabric as smooth. So I want to encourage you also, a little tip in that, just keep your paints as pure as you can. If you start mixing them, you may get a little bit of what I ended up seeing. You probably can't see it from me painting it. It was kind of shiny and wet, but once it dried, you could see kind of like these lines formed in it. And I think when I open a fresh bottle of paint, I normally don't see that characteristic. So I'm going to speed the movie up just a little bit so we can go, you can kind of see the duration in a fast movement as I completed the band. Okay, so I am all ready. I'm so excited to see the finished product after all of the painting, the tracing, the drying, the cutting, the patience that's required to make a handmade item. Yeah, she's going to be ready for Memorial Day. She's going to be ready for the 4th of July. And I am going to hold her up all summer. So thanks guys for being with me in this video. This is the 4th video, part 2. Our next video, we will be actually finishing up our prophetic American flag that has the staff in it. I've been thinking about some things that I'm going to adjust in that video, and I think it'll end up becoming a little bit more refined and better than the previous demonstrations I've done with this particular design. Okay, let's say a short prayer. Thank you, Father, for being with us, guiding us, and even in this time where we're celebrating Memorial Day in our nation also on the 4th of July. Father, strengthen each hand, strengthen our nation in Jesus' mighty name.